G'day everyone, this is Jacquie. So I've got a few more questions that have come in since yesterday about the 30-day reboot that we're doing using the Cortices technique every single day for 30 days, starting the 1st of November. And I wanted to answer those and also start taking you through a couple of the things that you really need to know and understand more deeply when it comes to the brain, when it comes to what it is that our objective is, so what our intention is going to, and also what's going to be happening when we do this technique. So one of the questions that I've been asked is, do I need to have had BodyTalk in order to be able to do this technique and join in on the 30-day reboot? No, you don't need to have had a session. You don't need to know the system. You don't need to have done access, whether it's with people or with the animal component, with me or with anybody else. You can come into this completely free of any type of training or education, and you're gonna love it, you're gonna understand it, and you will benefit from it a lot. The other question is, let me get my little, I dropped my book. My other question is it going to be recorded? Yes, it absolutely will be, because I'm doing it as lives on the page. Then after the live, obviously it's going to get posted to the page. Whether or not I leave it on there permanently for a long period of time, I'm just not quite sure yet, so we'll see how that goes. But they definitely will stay there for a period of time. Another question I've had is, what do I need to do to prepare for the technique, say over morning, or if you are going to be at work when we do it and you're going to be catching up and doing it later on the afternoon or the evening when you plug back in. Look, there's a few things that I actually do. What I want you to do is just hear what I say, let it rest softly and fall in front of you softly, and then take from that what you feel is important to you and right for you. Because this recipe is not right for everybody. You're so unique. There's not another person on the planet even remotely like you. So I really want you to be picky about how you prepare, and it's going to change from one day to another. So things that I tend to do when I'm going to come and prepare to do this technique, and remember, it's only a short technique. It doesn't take very long to do, maybe a minute or two at the most. My alarm bothered me. It set itself off. There's a few things that I do to prepare for that. One is that I tend to, depending on what the situation is, I like to kick my shoes off and have bare feet, because then I love this concept of like sort of just grounding myself out and getting a connection to the earth, which is somewhere underneath my feet, even if it is through tiles and concrete and so forth. So grounding is a really important concept to me. The other thing is that I tend to get rid of distraction if there's anything around, so turning off phones, turning off telly, anything like that. And I want to bring myself to this current space-time. So I will even just take a moment to shut my eyes. I take a couple of nice big deep breaths. As I'm breathing, I sort of drop my awareness down into the area of the heart. And then I will go into doing the Cortices technique. So that would be applied on a day or at a time where I have the time to do that. But of course, remember, I'm teaching you this technique so that you can implement it in any situation. If you are really stressed, if you are just about to go into something, or say a meeting, or you're just come out of a meeting and something's happened that's really bothered you or upset you or whatever, you need to be able to implement this technique right there and then. So what I'll do is we go through it over the days. I'll give you different situations and different ways that I implement this technique into my everyday life. So it doesn't matter whether it is, in meetings, or if you're in transit, travelling on the bus or the train or something like that, that you're going to have the tools to be able to do it straight away. Yeah, so I was just thinking, there's really, I'm really a big advocate for where your intention is going. So paying attention to what your intention is. You can come into this and have learnt the technique over 2 days. And it will be so powerful if your intention on what you're doing and why you're doing it is really, really clear. Versus somebody who has learnt and has been doing this technique for 5 years or 10 years. If they're doing it with really no thought or no regard, if their intention is not clear, if they don't really understand what it is that they're doing, they're absolutely not going to get the potential benefits out of it that they could. I think there's one more question, but I've dropped my book, so I'm just going to grab it. So take 5. Because I've got to write this stuff down, you know. Okay. What will it do? That's what I was going to talk to you about next anyway. Okay, the Cortices technique, the focus is on the brain. So by balancing the brain, we're profoundly influencing the health of the entire body-mind complex. And we are relaxing it in the process. Now, when somebody comes and does class with me, there's this really beautiful process and procedure that we go through to understand this technique in a lot of depth. But what I want to do is give you some valuable things right now that you can take away with you today. So this technique is probably the most critical one out of not only the access protocol, but the entire BodyTalk system. And as I said in one of my other lives, it's one of the it's the only technique really that we are able to teach anyone and everyone without it having to be in a class environment. And that's one of the reasons I love it, is because it's just so darn powerful. We're going to be able to use it in emergency situations, during times of stress, or even if you're just in discomfort, or one of your kids is, or an animal is, or so forth. You're going to be able to use it liberally in those situations. When we're doing this technique, it focuses on a few different parts of the brain. So one is the frontal, the other part is the parietal, the other part is the back of the brain, so the occipital part, and then we focus on the sides of the brain, so that's going to be the temporal lobes of the brain. So what we do know is that, in fact, all disease is reflected in the level of the brain to some degree. So when we're doing a technique that allows the brain to be able to organise itself more constructively, to be able to be more peaceful, to be more effective in the way that it's functioning and also in running its systems and so forth, then that is absolutely going to have a massive ripple effect into the body. So if you've got some significant issues that have been, it doesn't matter whether they're just new ones or whether they've been long-term ones for you, we have the power to really bring about great change with that. What we also do know is that there's this outer cortex layer of the brain, and the disease that's in the body shows up as cold spots on the cortex layer of the brain. And what we also know is that when we do this Cortices technique, is that it brings a lot of circulation and communication to these cold spots of the brain, and potentially eliminating the cold spots altogether. If we're eliminating cold spots from the cortex layer of the brain, then we have got some really significant healing processes going on in the body as well. So if through any of this, any questions come up for you, then just let me know. None of the questions are coming up, and sometimes when I do my live feeds off my phone, it doesn't show up very well at all. So just shout out if you're there, or you can even give me a like if you're around at all. Tapping out your cortices is going to restore the blood flow, the circulation of blood, the nerve supply to the brain, reducing the cold spots, as we just spoke about. It's going to have a really positive impact on your stress levels, which is probably one of the biggest things that people complain about and impacts you. And gosh, I know it does. There's just a lot going on for people, and we're not really designed to be able to digest it and process it all effectively the way that we're set up and the way that we're wired to do. So it will very, very much help with stress. It's one of the biggest things that people report. it calms the entire nervous system of the body. And one of the things that I've seen over and over again over the years is that animals love this technique. In fact, they will often come to you and they will initiate a response from you to indicate that they want the technique. Now, I used to have a dog. She's not with us anymore because she transitioned a couple of years ago, and her name was Bounce. She was this massive, great big bull mastiff, and she was just absolutely divine and hung out in a lot of classes with me. So she was really familiar with BodyTalk. But whenever she needed her cortices tapped out, she would come and she would slide her head underneath my hand while I had my arms down at my side, and I knew that that was her indication for tapping out cortices. You could literally see her and feel her whole body just relax and let go. And she would take these big, deep sighs, and all the tension would just start to leave her body, and you could see all the structure, the bony structure of her body relax and let go. So you're definitely going to see that with your animals. You're going to notice it with yourself as well. It also helps when we do these techniques for kids, for teenagers, and for animals especially. Adults have a little bit of a better handle of this, but for those three groups this works especially great for, is that it finds a balance between the instinct and the logical thinking for an animal. For example, not going and eating garbage or cat waste or kitty litter or anything like that. So that's really gross and disgusting. So it helps them find that balance that they so desperately need at times. And it gives you and them a much greater ability to be able to think and make choices beyond instinct alone. You know, this is a technique that now, my alarm clock keeps notifying me that I've got to go soon. It is now a technique that gets taught in schools all around the world, and a common report that the teachers have is that it instantly is like spreading calm throughout the class, and that all the kids start to speak quieter and their movements are more fluid, but they're more calmer, that they're able to, so that everyone's voices drop, that they're able to process information, to remember things more easily, and the attendance record at schools has actually gone up. So there are so many situations and environments that this technique alone has been implemented into, and they have seen just unbelievable changes from. I know that there was a situation where this was taken into prisons over in the US, and it was taught to the prisoners, and they were noticing just astounding changes within a prisoner's amygdala system. And it's that amygdala that would completely get fried and would cause them to make really poor choices in life, like stealing cars or holding shops up and robbing them, or robbing people. And once you can reboot the amygdala and make the amygdala happy, then it gives a person the ability for insight and also foresight, so they can maybe have an idea about, you know, breaking into and stealing a car, but what they're finding is that the person would automatically have this sense of consequence and have this insight into the ramifications for that, the impact that it would have on the person, what that means to them, the implications long term, the trouble that they could get into. So it set up a brand new wiring process in the brain, in the amygdala, that person would normally never have before. And that is unbelievable, because then if you can change the amygdala, and if you can change the way that the brain works for somebody that has really struggled and found themselves maybe in and out of the prison system, that is huge, because not only are they not going back into the prison systems, but they're really becoming quite valuable to themselves and valuable to society, and making really great changes in life. So the stories that I could tell you about this just go on and on and on. So I will endeavour to do that over the next month and a few days. And of course, if you have any questions at all, let me know. What I'm going to do is sign off for today. And I think there's one or two things that I want to take you through between now and when we get started on the 1st. So I'll endeavour to pop in over the next day or two, and I can't wait for the 1st of November. Have a great weekend, guys. It's been a beautiful Friday here, and I'm just really keen to kick off my weekend. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.